Now, one of the most important parts of any MMORPG is, of course, the leveling experience, where you are basically going from your very first steps into the game to the very end of the game. And that usually is a fairly long journey. Now, in the better MMO series that I've been doing, I wanted to cross-compare Final Fantasy XIV's leveling as well as Guild Wars 2's leveling experience, and who does it better? In this series, I've looked at combat, classes, story, leveling, and I will be looking at endgame. Now, within all 5 of those, I deem those the most important things when looking at an MMO, and fair enough to be able to compare them across the board. So, who has the better leveling experience? Let's get started. So, looking at Final Fantasy XIV's leveling experience, I will say that right out the gate, it is different compared to other MMOs that I've played. Now, Final Fantasy XIV's leveling experience, from what I've been told, has been squished over the years, as there have been more expansions and more experiences offered very quickly given the stories that you will be playing. Now, one of the heavy hitter emphasis of the game of Final Fantasy XIV is, of course, its story. And just by playing the MSQ, the main scenario quest, you can accumulate a ton of experience. In my playthrough of the base game up to level 50, I was max level, quote unquote, at level 50 by 3/4 of the way through the MSQ. And then even by the time that I finished the main story for the base game, I was over leveled of level 50, not really having to do much of anything other than the main story. Now, throughout the leveling experience, there's tons of different ways that you can gain experience, like you would expect from MMOs, by exploration, small side quests. I'm sure you can get it through crafting. I haven't dipped into crafting yet, but the idea of it is that there's a bunch of different ways that you can earn experience. However, in the time that I've spent in Final Fantasy, it hasn't felt necessary really for me to do anything other than the main story. Now, as I've played through and done a lot of these stories over on the sides, there's been a lot of really good storytelling and it's integrated into the leveling experience. However, Final Fantasy XIV really hammers in that emphasis of, here's a lot of cool stuff that you can do off to the side and a lot of different things that you can kind of quote unquote grind. But if you just play through the main story on your character, for the most part, you'll level up far faster than you ever need to. You don't really have to do much of anything else. Now, in my initial playthrough, of course, I have been doing the job quests, which are the class quests that are associated with it. And that has been more so to just unlock my abilities and make sure that I'm up to par as I am still going through the leveling experience, the questing experience, however you wish to call it. I will definitely give Final Fantasy a couple of bonus points, really. One of the things that I've actually loved is the direct integration of not only duties, which are these individual, you do these solo duties, which are a main part of the MSQ, but then on top of that, dungeons are integrated into the story directly. You must participate in these dungeons to continue the story, which I actually very much enjoy, I like, because not only does it add an extra emphasis of like, oh, this is a very big point that there's a dungeon here, but it shows that quality of group play in an MMORPG, which of course you should be playing with other players as you are in an MMO. And another way that I've found to get some experience, now I did this mainly when I was leveling up my other jobs. Now, as you're leveling your main class, the main job that you pick, you can choose to play other classes and learn how to play them by simply just talking to a character. Now, part of that is that your character will not be that same specific level that you switch over. So if you were level 50 on your warrior and you decide, you know what, I want to play a lancer, when you accept the job quest as a lancer and you switch over, which is technically like quote unquote your alt spec, you're back down to level 1 and you got to start that all over again. But if you've already done the MSQ, you're kind of behind. So what do you do? Well, in this regard, what Galactic had showed me, Galactic is my MSQ curator, however you wish to call it, basically my guide for this game. What we ended up doing was participating in a hunting log, which offered a mess of experience. Simply, we would just go into these different zones and go and fight these mobs that we have as our quote-unquote hunting logs, and as you fight off like 3 to 5 or something along that lines, you're given a whole bonus of experience, like quite a bit. So in the purpose of that is to essentially get you high enough level that you can start participating in dungeon roulettes. Now, leveling your alt job is always going to be the same amount of experience required. However, what's really cool about it is that if you have a higher level character than that job, you will gain 100% extra experience, essentially speeding up the process of leveling up to wherever your max level is. Galactic has told me that it's 100% increased experience leading all the way up to level 90, and then from level 90 to 100, it's 50% increased experience. So if you make that trek all the way up to your max level, then your alts are going to have an easier time getting up there. So that's pretty cool. That makes it a little bit simplistic. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Guild Wars 2. Now Guild Wars 2's leveling experience is directly tied to the open world for this game. And the reason I put it as such is that there aren't traditional quests in this game. There are story elements which happen every 10 levels, which offer quite a bit of experience. However, the majority of your experience that you're going to be gaining as we'll say the first time playthrough, is going to be just by going out and doing Renowned Hearts, which are local kind of essentially quests, we'll call them. However, you don't have to talk to anyone, you just show up and start doing, and then you're good to go. But you get experience from finding cool vistas to look out from, to finding different points of interest, completing hero point challenges. There's a bunch of different ways that you can earn experience. Crafting is another one. Like, there's so many different ways that you can earn experience that are not directly tied to just the main story. However, the main story does offer quite a bit of experience leading all the way up to max level. And again, I stress that the majority of your experience in Guild Wars 2 and what your leveling process is going to look like is going to be just trying out these different zones and where you can essentially boost yourself up to be able to fight on par enemies, or just following the main story along. You'll end up being in these different zones depending on the choices that you choose. However, I will say that Guild Wars 2 does something that's a little bit unique, which it's their level scaling. And I found out recently actually that ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, does that same kind of thing. It doesn't matter what level you are. Truly, if you're like, say for example, max level at level 80, if you go down to a lower level zone, you will be scaled down to that lower level zone and plow through everything for a friend to get them a whole bunch of experience. You're going to be roughly the same level, albeit I will say even in these lower level areas, you do feel very powerful. In my experience, I always feel like you get the more experience if you're on par with whatever level you are. So if you're level 30, if you're in a level 30 zone, then you're probably going to earn a little bit more of experience. However, you very well could just get to max level, staying in the starting zone of wherever you are. It'll be a little bit hard and there's a lot of farming that goes into it, but you could potentially do that. And then what's even more interesting with the leveling experience is that it doesn't just stop at max level. So Guild Wars 2 has this major system integrated, which is called masteries. Now, masteries are ways that you can earn experience after hitting max level for various quality of life things, or even convenience or story elements or legendary crafting and grinding, things like those that are integrated into your leveling experience. So even if you are max level and you are doing something that is in those particular zones after you've already earned all that experience, you're still gaining something. Now, to be fair with those, you also need mastery points, which can be found in various spots, as well as doing specific achievements and things like that. So there's a little bit of a grind for that in that regard. However, it's an interesting way to continue the leveling process even after hitting max level. So that's something that should be said. Now, if we're talking about alts will basically go through the same kind of instance where they have to level up all the way to max level. There are a few ways to make things a little bit easier, and the leveling experience with Guild Wars 2 is, in that sense, if you have a max level character and you do just a lot of just the normal end game content, you'll earn these things called Tomes of Knowledge, which each one of them grant you one single level. And if you give that to your alt, you can essentially, and you have all like 79 of them, you'll be able to get to max level, no problem, because you have the tomes and you don't have to do anything. It's not uncommon to have an alt who has 0 map completion all the way across the world of Tyria without actually leaving the starting zone. It's not, it has happened. I've done that personally myself with one of my alts. And also, having said that, there are a number of boosters and things, which you would expect actually from both games. However, the main leveling experience that you are going to find if you were just jumping into Guild Wars 2 is that it's heavily emphasized on exploration and just doing various things. Yes, the mobs do offer a bit of experience, and sometimes the real-time events that pop up offer a bit more of experience too, so it's a lot more dynamic and very flowy, which, again, I have to stress that the open world is one of the key features of Guild Wars 2. It's one of its most proudest features. It's really, really good. So all in all, you're really going to have a good time if you just like that kind of exploration and going out there and just doing what you need to. But which one is better? In this regard, I have to give the W to Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2's leveling experience has been always just a lot of fun. And then when I've gotten to max level and I don't feel like doing that long grind again, I can simply just boost my character up to max level without actually doing any more work than what I would normally be doing on my main character. As I've stated, the leveling experience and the exploration in this game really go hand in hand. It feels more like a living world that you are a part of, and you are gaining this experience by just living in it, versus just following the story in the MSQ for Final Fantasy XIV, where essentially you just check the boxes and you follow the MSQ and you're going to be over-leveled in no time. Now, it's not to say that it's a bad thing that Final Fantasy does a lot of their main leveling process, especially in the base game, just through the MSQ. It's not a bad thing. However, it should just be worthy of mentioning that there is a difference of opinion. If you like the more story-based and I'm leveling up as I'm playing through this main story and learning about the world around you, then Final Fantasy XIV is obviously going to edge out Guild Wars 2. However, Guild Wars 2's just freedom, in my opinion, is a really great way for an MMO to feel alive. And I didn't even mention that as you're going out and exploring and doing all these different things, there are plenty of real-time events that pop up where you're having tons of higher level players come into the zone that you are in to participate in whatever the meta is, and a world boss have you. And it's just, it feels more dynamic. It feels a lot better, in my opinion, with leveling. And again, I do have to mention that they do sell, of course, the max level character boosts where you can essentially boost your character up to level 80. If you purchase an expansion, I think you get one for free with every single one. So there's just a number of different ways that you can get to max level, and if you've done it before for the first time, it feels a lot better, but then even after that, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to level up alts or to do anything along that. So I really think Guild Wars 2 does it very well just because it's so closely entwined with one of its crowning features, which is its open world. I think that's why Guild Wars 2 does the leveling experience just a bit better than Final Fantasy XIV. Now, I've recently talked about the story and the classes and the combat and compared them between these two games, and you can check that playlist right here to see all the videos that I've made on this particular series. Aside from that, stay caffeinated, folks.